I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Kammer,
Here.
Carbonaro, absent. DEYNE,
Yes.
GABRENYA,
Here.
HOPKINS,
Here.
Reinke,
Present.
President Wallace.
Here. We are going to adjust the agenda a little bit to accommodate those in the audience. We're going to start out the community with the Community and Economic Development Committee, Chairman Gabrenya.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item on the Community and Economic Development Committee is the Bartlett Plaza BEDA application. And I would like to defer in a moment. Okay, let's do that again. So the first item on our committee is the Bartlett Plaza BEDA application, and I would like to defer to Tony Frayden to walk us through that.
Thank you, Chairman Gabrenya. This is a BEDA application for one of the larger and older shopping centers here in our downtown area, Bartlett Plaza, just a little bit south of here. The applicant is a gentleman by the name of Manny Rafidia. And I'm going to give some background of the shopping center, Mr. Rafidia himself, and the BEDA application. In terms of the shopping center itself, you are all aware that it's been on the market for some time. It's been owned by the original developers of the center who've owned it for many decades, the Gorskys. They've listed it for sale with a broker from C.B. Richard Ellis a couple of years ago, seeking out potential buyers for the center. Due to multiple factors, there's been a large vacancy in the former grocery space. It's 31,860 square feet, and that particular space requires several improvements to be made to it to bring it up to current code, and also you could say to beautify the center to make it more attractive to a potential occupant. So back when it was very cold out late last year into early this year, Mr. Rafidia, who's a local shopping center owner and somebody who redevelops and rehabs shopping centers, started investigating the center, communicating through brokers and meeting with myself and Scott on several occasions just to do his due diligence and to learn more about the community and the history of the shopping center and the downtown area. So through his holding company, Mr. Rafidia has purchased and improved 18 shopping centers throughout Illinois, Ohio, and Arizona. Actually, a few more than that, but that's what I understand he currently owns. Several of these shopping centers include Prospect Crossing Shopping Center in Prospect Heights, Century Plaza in Palatine, Cross Creek Commons in Roselle, Montgomery Plaza in Montgomery, and he owns 2 shopping centers in Addison, one called Lake Street Commons and another one called Lake Street Plaza. We checked with some of these communities, particularly Addison and Roselle, who both spoke highly of his ability to purchase and redevelop shopping centers such as Bartlett Plaza that suffer from high vacancy rates. As of tonight, there's over 36,000 square feet vacant in Bartlett Plaza out of the 86,000 square feet, giving it a very high vacancy rate of 42.6%. Now, over the past few years, as new tenants have come to centers throughout the community, including Amita Healthcare and several others, we've seen a large decline in the vacancy rate since January of 2016, kind of hit a high, almost 18%, 17.7, and it's been brought down to just over 7% over the past 2 years. So you can see that 42% pretty significantly high vacancy rate for a shopping center. So where we're at now is the longtime owners of Bartlett Plaza, the Gorskys, have entered into the attached There's a sales contract that was attached into the board, or the committee packet, that was signed on August 6th. So it's been under contract now for going on 2 months. We've continued to meet with Mr. Rafidia, who's here tonight, talking about plans for redeveloping, possibly dividing up the empty grocery space and bringing new tenants to Bartlett Plaza. I want to stress that currently it's just under contract. He hasn't closed on the property yet. It's partially subject to various incentives, including potential BEDA incentive. You'll see on his application that he requested $250,000 in incentives, and we explained to him that the way the BEDA program was created has a limitation, a certain amount of funding, and we've designed it with a maximum incentive amount of $50,000. So in terms of the recommendation, getting Bartlett Plaza into the hands of a new purchaser and redeveloping the space and filling some of the vacancies fits nicely into several elements of the village's strategic plan, as well as the 2016 to 2020 marketing plan that the Economic Development Commission developed, in terms of attracting developers to invest in the downtown area, working to improve the retail business profile in the village, and to revisit, refine, and execute the village's overall economic development incentives. Thus, you have a lot of information in front of you tonight in terms of his plans that detail $2 million worth of improvements that he intends to make to the center should he close on it. This would be in addition to the purchase price of the center. So in terms of leveraging private investment via this program, which is one of the criteria that we had detailed to you when we created it, the $50,000 incentive would come out to 2.5% of project costs out of the $2 million of rehab that he would do to the center. It includes really a little bit of everything, improvements to the roof, the facade, parking lot, lighting, landscaping, HVAC, sidewalks, signage, and as I mentioned, the build out of the former grocery space. So he appeared before the Economic Development Commission last month. They asked him several questions, which he answered, and ultimately the EDC recommended in favor of awarding him a BEDA grant in the amount of $50,000 in the hopes that he would be able to move forward on this project. And I would try to answer any questions that you may have. And I saw Mr. Rafidia in the audience tonight as well, if you have any questions of him.
Could you introduce us to Mr. Rafidia?
Yes, Mr. Rafidia? He's sitting in the back.
Sure. Please.
While he's walking up, how much is available in the BEDA fund? In the program?
Well, the first grant was made earlier tonight,
Right.
in the amount of $25,000. There's another $15,000 one pending, so after this, there would be, I got to do some.
Total amount we allotted.
$35,000.
What's the total amount we allotted is what he's asking?
$150,000.
150.
Yeah,
In the timeline on that, is the budget year or? it's
right, the
budget year?
fiscal year, May
Okay.
1st.
So May 1st, so we're 6 months into, 5 months into. And how many other applications are pending?
There's one other that has already gone to the Economic Development Commission in the amount of $15,000, and we're also working with an applicant for next month.
Can you speak to, I guess my interpretation of this program was more as it would relate to the smaller businesses, such as the Indian restaurant that we approved this evening on the agenda. Did I misunderstand that that it would be individual small. How does this specifically meet the criteria set for the BEDA process?
Right. When we described it, it was, that was one of the big aspects of it, was to assist small businesses with smaller grants, like the one for $25,000 earlier tonight. However, there was never any limitation based upon the size and the scope of the project. What the goals of it were to increase sales tax producing businesses in the village, so available for things like restaurants and stores. We were also looking at items like job creation, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the leveraging private investment through public investment. So looking at the ratio of how much a private investor or business person would be investing as opposed to the amount of the grant. So it fits into that in terms of the former grocery space was one of the properties that we talked about hoping to utilize this for. Maybe not exactly with a buyer, but perhaps with a specific business. But that's how it fits well into this, an opportunity to redevelop and fill a vacant space. It will have been vacant for 8 years as of next month.
Thank you.
Did the $2 million that you mentioned, did that include the purchase price of the property?
No, that would be, that's the redevelopment. He had submitted a budget of the improvements that he would make, so that's in addition to the purchase
The
price.
$2 million is a
That's
pretty
correct.
sizable improvements that you'll be making there.
Yes, I'm familiar with doing this so many times in the probably last 5 years. I've gone through actually more money put it into these projects. I just believe the reverse of almost every developer that get the tenant then fix. I believe fixing first, then getting the tenant will attract, the traffic of businesses to come into the center. But definitely we'll spend more than that, $2 million.
So when do you anticipate closing?
It's 90 days contract, and from that point, I have another 60 days or 30 days extension to continue to do my due diligence regarding the assistant from the village and the county property tax relief, and then 30 days to close. So from now, 3 months, basically.
Okay. Fantastic. I hope you find a speedy way to the closing table.
Well, I will try my best. Again, I just want to mention regarding, that this was designed for a small business. The fact that I just reopened a place in Roselle called Pop's Pizza and Pop 2 weeks ago. I put in $1,200,000 in improvement in it, and the most important thing that I hired 80 people to work in that place. So 80 employees, almost full-time. And with the Cubs game tonight, I'm like, I can't wait till I run back to help. It is just one unique game that you don't see that in a lifetime, that, everybody wants to watch the game. But the idea is that when I get that center going, it's going to employ a lot of people. It's going to employ, I don't know exactly what we're going to end up with that big space, whether it's going to be a big sports, arena or combination of adult and children entertainment center. I previously had built places called DEYNE, and I don't know if any of you remember those. I had 3 locally here, and they did very well. Then I sold them, but that's an idea that it's a mixed entertainment of adult and children that can interact, and you can bring your kids and roller coasters, and all kind of different, games and food. But that just also, again, I am not a developer in all. I am a business owner too. I invest in my shopping center not only as a developer, also as a retailer myself. So I currently own and operate, at least in all these shopping centers that I have, maybe 6 businesses. So basically, I will probably end up opening some kind of business here. I just don't have the hands-on to know the area very well. I'm still studying it.
That puts a very interesting perspective on your project. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I ask you, was the BEDA program out there attractive? Was that part of the decision-making process?
Actually not. I was looking for, in my previous investments that I did, I had, and villages offered money, especially in the last development that I did in Addison on Lake and Mill. There was this old Dominic building. I don't know if you guys remember. It was sitting there for 20 years.
Yeah.
And the Fannie
Familiar with those.
With the Fannie Mae building on the corner. Today, it's 3 years later, 100% occupied with national tenant, AutoZone, and health center, and all smaller neighborhood mom and pop, different kind of businesses. So I'm just saying that. What was the question? Just wanted to.
I'm sure the BEDA program.
My mind is on
I'm
the
sure the BEDA program, the grant will help somewhat, though, right?
You know what? It helped. Anything can help, but Addison offered me $250,000 on each center, and the one down the street right across from the Village Hall, and I was able to bring a big grocer there, 50,000 square feet, and the front Blockbuster building became vacant when I bought the center, and I brought in Little Caesars and a dentist there. So, and these are basically similar in size like this center, except for the one in Prospect Heights is about 200,000 square feet. And a couple years ago, I brought Tony's Finer Food in there. The experience that I have in my retail, 40 years retail experience and with development helps me kind of work good with tenants and convince them to. Like today, I had a really good talk with one of the grocers that was previously interested, and I hope I can score with them. And I don't become stingy when it comes to making deals with tenants. I'm willing to give in and work with them. But the BEDA program, $50,000 will help. I know it's not going to change my mind about making a deal or not. I still got a couple other things that I got to, go through before I make my final decision.
Well, we appreciate your being here and also being at the Economic Development Commission. I know you answered a lot of their questions as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Move it to board.
Move it to the board.
Chris.
Agreed.
I would like to move that to the next board meeting, please.
Good.
Sorry about that. Okay, Mr. President, moving on to our next item on the agenda is the Gambit's Ordinance Amendment and Special Use Permit. And Roberta, will you be taking us through that this evening? Thank you.
Okay, just to refresh, the petitioner is requesting to amend Ordinance 9514, Exhibit A, which is the permitted uses, and a special use permit to serve alcohol. And the request is for Gambit's, a restaurant with video gaming, proposed to be located at 997 South Route 59 in the Bartlett Place Shopping Center. The Plan Commission did review the petitioner's request, conducted the public hearing, and recommended approval at their July 12th meeting, subject to the conditions and findings of fact outlined in the staff report. One of the conditions that they added at the meeting was that the trash enclosure be relocated to the southern limits of the parking lot, with the final location and design to be coordinated and approved by the community development staff. The petitioner contacted the other owners in the building regarding the relocation of the trash enclosure, and the owners are actually not in favor of the enclosure being moved. Groot was also contacted by staff, and due to maneuverability issues and safety concerns, if the enclosure was to be relocated, they are also not in favor of relocating the trash enclosure. Groot did, though, agree to limit their pickup times, and staff recommends that trash pickup not be before 9 a.m. The Village Board Committee reviewed the requests at their August 21st meeting, and a straw poll vote was conducted. And as you know, the consensus was to not send the project to the board. The petitioner is here tonight with their attorney, and they are requesting the project be moved to the Village Board for a final vote. There is a petitioner's letter and supplemental information contained in your packet tonight, and I believe they would like to speak.
Good evening again. Thank you again for allowing us to speak. My name is Vincent Mancini. I'm an attorney retained on behalf of Marvel One Management and Jennifer Craig. You have to get a sense of the irony of this evening in that we just heard about the vacancy rates in the village for commercial, along with the BEDA program, which is funded by gaming. And now we've also have an application in front of you which would satisfy both of those elements in terms of filling a long vacant piece of commercial property that frankly is becoming dilapidated by the lack of use. And I have a client who's Bassett trained and food handling trained who wants to open a restaurant in that location, which does include gaming, which would continue to fund the BEDA program. There's been a lot of objections that have been raised by the community that I've read and heard this evening. What I can compare that to is fighting ghosts, because the objections are based on nothing more than speculation. The village allows restaurants in its boundaries. It allows gaming in its boundaries. Both of those elements would be allowed in this site, but for an ordinance that was passed in 1995. If you reflect on 1995, the developments that are north of this site were not in place at that time. And those include many commercial areas, many restaurants, and many gaming establishments. So what's being asked today and tonight of this application is nothing different than what's in the area now. So we are essentially fighting ghosts. It's speculation as to what might or might not happen with this establishment. The fact that people are over 21 that are going to be there does not impugn some sort of nefarious conduct. I'm over 21. I eat at restaurants. I have an occasional beer like Justice Kavanaugh. So nothing about this establishment would indicate that it's going to be a problem for the neighbors, frankly. It's not a live music establishment. It's not going to attract youth and young people. We hear about garbage. Well, we've addressed those issues. We've addressed the garbage issues. Garbage company will pick up more frequently if we move in there. So we are always willing to work with staff and the board to address the issues, but it's hard for us to say what we won't end up doing if these ghosts suddenly appear. I have to prove a negative. I'm an attorney by trade. You're asking me to prove a negative, that something won't happen in the future, and I can't do that. And neither can you, frankly. So I have a qualified candidate who would like to open a restaurant in this location, and nothing about that I've heard to this date or in the Plan Commission is a factual basis by which you can reject the application at this stage. The Plan Commission's your fact finder. The Plan Commission heard all of this evidence, the staff's comments, the staff's review, and the Plan Commission approved it with very few conditions which we can easily meet. So frankly, the factual record before this board is one that would support this establishment. So again, on behalf of my client, who's here and can speak and answer any questions, and we thank the staff. They worked with the staff for over 8 months. They've expended tens of thousands of dollars in rent to hold the space. and they were frankly shocked by the straw poll that came out in August, which resulted in me being retained. So we would ask this to be pushed forward to the board for vote, because we think we've satisfied all the requirements under the PUD applications, under all the variance applications that are part of the staff and village requirements. And we think we need to be, the vote needs to go forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, would like to ask a question, if I may. Obviously, a number of us are very torn by this, and we know what the ordinance is, and we know that we have the capabilities of amending that ordinance and changing it to be in compliance. And some of my confusion lies in the fact that there are some people on this board that have some very strong opinions about gaming, okay? And yes, as we heard earlier this evening, there are a number of people, the number of restaurants in this village that have gaming. Once they have the restaurant and they have the liquor license, they can apply to the state and they can have gaming. And I'm very torn by this, as other people are. I would like you to just take a few minutes and explain to this board what specifically differentiates your restaurant with gaming or just a standalone gaming facility. What's so unique about your menu? What do you have that would be different? How are you different than the Bettys and the Stellas that we have here in this village right now? I need you to share that, with me specifically, along with the board.
Thank you for the opportunity to address that, because it's an important issue. This is a restaurant, first and foremost. It's going to serve freshly made food. It's not frozen pizzas thrown in an oven that are heated up for people who are having a pint or two of beer. The menu is attached to the application. We outlined a breakfast menu, a lunch menu, appetizers, a dinner menu, which includes probably some of the, I'm actually hungry, I didn't eat dinner. So I'm looking at this thinking, we have T-bone steak for dinner. We have obviously pizza and southern bracciole. Being Italian myself, I know what bracciole is, and if it's good, I'll be there eating it, frankly, because you can't find it other than maybe what my mother might make. So the chef is here. He can discuss that with you. This is a restaurant. The gaming is a supplemental form of income. It's necessary in this day and age, frankly, given the margins that are on food. This business, if it just opened as a restaurant, we all know the statistics. They don't survive. They don't survive within a year. With the gaming, they could at least survive to be a restaurant longer, establish a customer base, get a clientele, and maybe be here 3 years, providing all kinds of sales tax revenue to this village. That's why gaming is important to all of these restaurants. I represent several clients and before other villages. The gaming aspect allows them the time to create the business, because otherwise they go under. These are not wealthy people who open restaurants. These are people who are driven by their passions. They're artists to some extent, and they need that time to establish the restaurant to support the business. And without gaming, they would be gone. Their business model would not succeed. So they're not here to establish a casino on Route 59. They're here to establish a well-regarded restaurant, and they're using gaming to support that in the interim while they do that. So I really think nothing about the application exposes itself as being nothing more than a tavern with gambling. That's not what this is. The layout is even, you walk in, you don't see gaming and bar. The layout, as is in the application, is a dining facility. The gaming is actually pushed back behind a wall. There's side rooms that could be rented for family gatherings or things of that nature. So food and family is the first priority of this establishment. The gaming is just a supplemental income to get them through the lean years.
Well, I'd kind of like to know your definition of a family then, if that's the case, because it's been designated at 21 and older. And I think when we typically think of family, we might think of family as children younger than that. And I don't think that's what's been proposed here.
Well, I agree in terms of what has been presented. Obviously, if that's something that's a concern, it hasn't been raised to this point with the applicant. It is a dining establishment. It's for adults as it's currently considered. There are, though, these rooms to the side that can be used by private parties. I don't think there's anything that would prohibit children from being at a private party of that nature. But the establishment itself is going to be for adults at this stage. It's not a huge establishment either. If you take a look at the depiction, it's 3 storefronts along the southern end of the vacant portion of the building. So they kind of have to have a market, they kind of have to identify their market and have to focus on that market. They can't be everything to everyone. But I don't know what being over 21, how that is a negative. Those are the people who have money. Those are the people who want to have a good time. Those are the people that want to have a good meal. And those are the people that game. And that's the revenue that this would generate. That's the clientele.
Can I ask for clarification on the other tenants, as well as the other owners? I know that you had spoken at the last meeting that you had received support from the other tenants. However, those people who bought condos in that center, business condos is what they are, is that correct, if I'm not mistaken, bought condos bought under the current restrictions of those properties. Have we received positive feedback from the owners in regard to that, what they had purchased potentially 20 years ago? And there must be a condo association associated with that?
They did not formally go through the correct process with the association. They have an informal document that they drafted that was signed by 2/3 of the owners, and there is a second document that I believe has been signed that I saw at one point signed by the other owners. So I think they have informally the owners' consent. They haven't gotten the condo association's consent, but if all the owners approve, I think that's a foregone conclusion. I will say that the zoning ordinance, and those covenants were approved by the then owner and developer. And in part, it was a compromise with neighbors as well. So it isn't just the other owners in the condo association who relied on it, but property owners. And to get it approved, the then owner turned out to be the developer and the declarant on the covenants, made certain what otherwise would be permitted uses in the B2 district. He made them excluded uses, and under your ordinance, excluded uses then become prohibited uses. Now, it also provided for it could be the fact that it could be amended. So that's why we have due process and we have a hearing. They had a hearing before the Plan Commission, and they can ask that it be amended, and that's what they've done, to try and change what were listed as excluded uses and make them permitted uses. Okay, so
it goes to
you
us
have the
before
other
it goes-
owners who have a stake in this, so to speak, and I believe that they have that consent, and that would be a condition of an ordinance approving it, and you will have a resolution before you to deny it. You will have 2 options if you send this on to the board for a vote. Now, so you've got people, and you heard from some of the neighbors, some in support and some not, some of whom live close by.
But the condo association owners are all, not the tenants, the owners who own the properties.
Right.
Owner occupied at this time, and we did mention it in one of our previous meetings. They are undergoing change of presidency for this association. So we did get signatures for everyone that we could reach on there, which was the majority, and they are all in favor of this. They do think that it'll bring business. They're tired of the vacancy as well. They're also worried about what else might go in there that might take away from their business. everyone that we spoke to was in great favor. They see it as an overflow that might potentially bring them more business as well, or attention to their businesses, especially the hair salon and the nail salon. Right now, unless you're destined to be there, you kind of don't notice them. They did agree that they would be changing their paperwork as well, as long as the village was in agreement. That does have to go in effect when the president is officially appointed.
So when I saw this come back up, one of the questions I asked myself is, why are we back here? What has changed? And I don't see what has actually changed since the previous committee meeting. Has there been any, no amendments indicating no? So one of the conditions that the Plan Commission placed on the approval was that relocation of the trash bin. Has there been any movement in that regard?
As we mentioned, staff contacted Groot, and they were not in favor of that relocation. Staff concurs with that. Moving the trash enclosure to the south end of that parking lot would cause the garbage truck to have to back completely up through the entire parking lot, which would be very difficult and not safe. And the petitioner has contacted, as Trustee GABRENYA brought up, the other owners of the property, and they are not in favor of it as well. So to answer your question, no,
So
nothing has changed.
And part of my concern, and I see your Facebook posts, and you kind of gloss over this part. Part of my concern was the trash enclosure. You say you're a restaurant and not a gaming facility. I'm not a huge fan of gaming. I'd be far more inclined to approve the gaming facility than to have a dumpster full of food refuse next to some person. I went out there so I went out to the property, I looked at I walked the adjacent residential property, and that dumpster is very close to the fence line. I think there's an important distinction between a dumpster filled with, papers and a dumpster filled with food. So I think we need to make some changes, and we need to make some movement there in order for me to really support that.
You ask it that also stand for any restaurants in Bartlett, because that is not the case, as we provided you with pictures.
Right.
So I don't feel that you can hold us to something that you are not currently holding other businesses that have been open for quite some time, with no enclosure at all, being a restaurant, with no privacy at all, and their dumpsters with less than a foot within a neighboring fence. So then it becomes, what resident is more important than another? And that's not fair. We're all important, myself included. I am a Bartlett resident. I don't want it to be a power struggle. I just don't feel that the people behind the particular restaurant that we provided pictures for is less important than the people in Apple Valley.
Okay, so let me make a few more comments, because I do practice law in the area of zoning law. So I will tell you that the burden of proof is on you. So when you say, well, there's all these other restaurants, look, I may or may not have voted on that other restaurant. What I'm voting on right now is this restaurant, so I can talk about this one. And I haven't seen any basis for me to look at those neighbors and say, hey, guess what? You're going to live, next to a dumpster filled with food refuse. I just don't see it. So, if the board decides to move this on to the full board for a vote, I'm looking forward to anything that you can add other than, some nebulous argument. I also want to talk about something that really upset me. So I found this Facebook post. This really bothered me, and I have to ask you about this. I want to be fair about it. So this is by a Jacqueline Del Rey. She says, and I'm going to quote, "Here's the thing that gets me. The board members were in full support of it for months. One person complains and all of a sudden it goes to a halt. Are they paying the board members? Offering support to future campaigns? It doesn't seem right that after months and months of support, it can get derailed so quickly." So I saw that, and then you responded. And you said, "Jacqueline," so that's the person that wrote that post, "thank you so much for bringing this up, as it is an excellent point." So my first question to you is, Would you like to explain that? Because it's hard.
Oh,
because
yes, absolutely. First of all, I wouldn't see that the town village hall meeting is an appropriate place for social media, but I will address it. Jacqueline is not here to defend herself. Some of the comments that she made, I don't think they came across correctly, as she was very frustrated from some personal experiences that she's
I'm
dealt
asking
with.
about you.
Yes.
Because you endorsed it.
No, so my comment was that I was addressing the fact that she said, what happened that all of a sudden at our last meeting, it was not voted in favor. It wasn't. Jacqueline did retract her statement. I did speak to some of the other people that were involved and just kind of address that I think her words were maybe mistaken to some of the comments that she made, because it goes on beyond that.
Well, my question is to
The one that I was referring to was that we have gone through these village meetings and seem to have not all of your support, but enough support to move us along to this point. We ourselves want to know what happened, that all of a sudden everything was to a screeching halt, to a straw vote that voted against us. So that was my comment that I was addressing to her. I tried to clarify that with it being social media. Sometimes it's hard. People mistake things. I don't think Jacqueline's comment was directed as it was. I think she was speaking from a place with a lot of emotion. I don't agree with everything that she said. I was referring to those words as she was wondering why it was passed along to this point and then stopped. That was the only part that pertained to me whatsoever. That was the only part I was addressing.
Okay, so to clarify for the purposes of the record, and sir, I'll get to you next, because it seems like you have a lot to say. So as you stand here, you're not suggesting that anybody on the board is taking money, correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay, because that, you could see where that would be very hurtful.
And I understand that. And that's why I said I don't think she meant it maybe to come out the way she did. I think that she was speaking from a place personally of her frustrations with the village at that time.
I'm talking about you.
Myself, I was not agreeing with what she was saying, just to the effect of, we aren't sure exactly what happened either.
Okay.
The Facebook post was compound, Counselor, and the response was a single response.
Well, and I'm trying to get
So
a straight answer.
cross-examining my client based on a Facebook post written by somebody else, and her saying, I'm in support of, or I agree with you, is a bit reckless. I don't want this to devolve into some sort of anger session between you and my clients.
Right.
If somebody said something like that, it's grossly inappropriate. My client agreeing with the sentiment that they've met with village staff for 8 months, got nothing but positive reviews, and then got sidetracked by a straw vote was upsetting to them. I'm here because of that.
And I understand that. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you don't think that we're on the take, and that.
Absolutely not, and I never personally suggested that or agreed with that. I was just in agreement with the fact of, we were at a loss as to what happened as we've been going through these meetings, and we're passed along.
Thank you.
Seemingly with support. I don't agree with a lot of those things that were said, so I do just try to keep it as simple as can be without, hey, I quoted you, completely agreed with this part. It should have been a little clearer, and I do apologize if you guys took it that way. I also apologize for Jacqueline making that statement. Again, she's not here to defend herself. I don't truly think that's what she meant.
Thank you.
Trustee Reiki, thank you very much for bringing that up. That's very insulting to myself. I don't get the, I'm not on Facebook, and I've heard people stop me on the streets about what's going on with kickbacks in with this situation. In fact, I talked to Trustee Hopkins about that earlier this evening. I said, where's that coming from? Who are they referencing? What are they talking about? I will vouch for every one of these people that serve on this board. They're all respectable people. They all have businesses in this community. The community service and the efforts that we put forth to maintain the integrity of this village is beyond reproach. And I'm very happy you brought that up, because that's the first that somebody actually told me exactly what was going on.
Okay. And so I think we can move past that. Council, I disagree with your earlier comments, but that's fine. So let's talk about signage, because I know there's been some concerns about the signage. What kinds of possible signage would we see at this site?
We've attached a simple depiction of the name Gambit's on the front of the facade of the building.
So we're not going to see a different sign an additional monument sign or anything for this site. It's basically going to be substantially similar to the one that's on the structure already, on the site.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think we have any authority, nor are we seeking a variance to allow a monument sign.
Okay. So it would just be the sign on the building, and then would you have a slat on the monument sign? No.
Unfortunately, the condo association is unwilling to change the monument sign at this time, maybe in future years if everything goes well, but currently that's not up for debate with them. We would love to have something different, but currently they just want to keep it as Bartlett Place.
Yeah, like I said earlier, a couple hearings ago, I think it is a fantastic concept. I think it is very exciting. I don't know about the site. I think the site's a problem for you, but, I only have one vote.
If I can ask a couple of things on clarification, just out of curiosity, since we're talking about the name, what's the origin of the name? How did you come up with that?
So also to touch on the location as well, because I know that was a big thing for you guys. I try to keep it as professional and not personal, but I would like to share this with you. Everything kind of goes into a theme with my children, with my pets, and in my home. I'm a big Marvel fan. So when we were looking for the types of food that we would serve, and recognize that we would be touching on a Cajun food, kind of just search for things that went with that, and Gambits did pop up. It was also one of the potential names for my dog, and we chose to go a different route and name her Avenger. So it was always on my head. My children also are named beyond themes, and as far as the location, I know we discussed it before, like why this location. My first tie with Bartlett was actually at Country Insurance at this location, way back when they first opened in, I believe, like 98, the beginning of 98. I had purchased my first vehicle on my own, and I needed to get insurance, and I walked into Country Financial, spoke to Nate there, wonderful agent, and I signed up, and it was my first, I felt like, adult decision I had made on my own as far as signing any type of agreement or contract. And you go about your merry ways. When we were looking at locations, which we looked at several, including Bartlett Plaza, which I'm very happy to hear is getting some things done, hopefully. We needed a location that could size our plans, which would also bring in enough traffic, not just from Bartlett, but from neighboring areas as well. Bartlett's great. It would be wonderful if we could, have a spot right in the middle. But with the other businesses, I don't want to put myself in direct competition with them as well. I don't think that it would be beneficial for myself or for them. So when looking at this location, we were waiting for the real estate agent to come. And I just happened to look up at the address, and I see 997. And at that moment, it was a rough day for me. Just a lot of negativity with this adventure, it being a woman-owned business and a small business with not a whole lot of history behind me personally. To go off into this adventure, it's pretty scary, to be honest with you. It is very scary. Not exactly sure what lies ahead of us, if we can open, when we can open. Time is important and money as well. So that particular day, I just had a few moments and just kind of said a prayer to myself. And I often ask my mother for help in those moments. She has passed away, and she was very close to me, and sometimes she sends me signs. And so the real estate agent was fumbling with keys, and I kind of rolled my eyes like, oh my God. And I looked up, and I see the address again, and it hit me, 997. This address itself means a lot to me. My firstborn was born in September of 97, and I truly think that shaped my life and determined kind of who I was going to be as a person. And so that just in itself, before I even walked into the building, really set my heart on this place. Hey, it's in Bartlett. Your life comes full circle. This is where I started as an adult, in this insurance place. Nothing else has been there, and now it's been vacant for all these years. And here I am trying to open my business in this same very place. So the first moments trying to explain to the realtor why I was crying and trying to piece myself together, it was difficult because it seemed a little crazy to her. But when I tell you that my heart is not just in Bartlett, and I love Bartlett, but It really is. We've given back to things in the community. We've given our time. We've given money from the business when we're not even open to show our support of Bartlett, because this is where we are. This is where my roots are. My kids go to school here. They're involved in events here. I don't want to open in anywhere else. I don't want to go to another town and support them. I don't want my tax dollars to go there. I don't want my sales tax to go there. I want to support my community. I want to know that I can see where my money is going and what it's going for.
Clarification. Gambit is a Marvel character who comes from Louisiana, which is why the other citizen who's from Louisiana earlier, the short lady, why she said she was so excited is because that's what Gambit's is. It has nothing.
I thought everybody was Marvel fans.
Yeah, it has nothing to
He's a
do.
superhero?
He is.
Yeah.
He's part of the X-Men legacy. He comes from Louisiana, eats Cajun
I
food.
was just curious. I didn't know if it had I didn't know if it had a basis in gaming, because it seems to. But secondly, my curiosity is that in the process of going and finding sites, you had to have been advised that this was not zoned for a restaurant, right from the very beginning.
Correct.
And so the question I guess I would have is then, why would you ignore that?
It wasn't ignored. When we initially presented this to the village, it didn't seem to be an issue to get this amended. Had we known it was going to be such a struggle in front of us, we may not have proceeded. But at that time, it didn't seem like it was going to be an issue whatsoever.
Well, I think the reason why you saw such support from the board at the concept phase was it was a concept, right? And you know, this is life, so the devil is in the details. So that's where you see that shift. And I saw how you kind of portrayed that too on Facebook, and didn't much care for that. But the reason why we have that shift in perspective is now we have a lot more details. I've heard, you know, concerns of the residents. I've gotten to know a little bit more about your business. So we have a lot more information on our hands right now. I know who Gambit is. Learn who Gambit is.
I think,
that's important.
I think that's a really key piece of this whole adventure, that horrible adventure that you've been on, is you went from a concept without any type of an approval and started working on a business that this board hadn't really even discussed or gotten information on. So it is, I find it very, very unfair with a lot of the rhetoric that's going around on social media. I don't go on social media very often, but I hear about it a lot. Very unfair for this board to be scrutinized by, oh, we were in favor of a concept. We were not in favor of an exact location. So therein lies the details of why you felt like maybe you were running down a road so fast and shouldn't have been putting any money into it until you had an approval.
And it's a planned unit development with very specific uses. This is in the nature of a text amendment where property owners around it rely on it. And so until you have that public hearing and get some input, and you saw more of it today, you know, I'm glad you have your attorney here. I wish you had him involved sooner and could have looked at the ordinance that you were dealing with. Because, you know, and there was some inquiry of me to help draft whatever this consent would be of the other condo owners. I said, you know, hands off. There's other people that are going to be affected by this petition. You guys bring forward what you bring forward, and that may be something you can clean up later. It could be a condition of this ordinance if the board wanted to approve it. But, you know.
That being said, I'd be curious too, for those residents that we heard from earlier, if they had any idea when they purchased their property that there was some type of a restriction against restaurant there. I highly doubt that they knew that there was a restriction there anyway.
Some people did.
Some people did.
The people, when this was approved originally, that was in part why those restrictions were there, was because of the neighbors' outcry, and it
just the
passed
restaurant
by a
portion.
slim margin when it was approved, in part because of the complaints of the neighbors. So, but
I think
uses have changed, and council's pointed that out, and some
May I
development
ask
has
a
changed
question
around it.
in relation to this, to neighbors? And I want to, without a doubt, I want to applaud your tenacity your dedication to this project, your perseverance, and your passion, both of you. Your passion for your food, I feel it already. And your passion for this town is undeniable, and I want to acknowledge that. You have created, without even yet having a business, a tribe in this town. It's obvious, it's clear. They may have strayed, I didn't know that, but they may have. But the point is, you created a tribe. You got people on your side. My question to you is, have you done that with your neighbors? What have you done to get the support of your neighbors? Have you tried? Has it been received, or maybe not? Have we talked to them about the ghosts and tried to alleviate their concerns? Or is that just not something you...
Are you referring to the resident neighbors, or are you referring to the...
Resident neighbors. I'm sorry, I should have...
Yes.
made
At
that.
our initial meeting, that some of these residents first came out, I did try to introduce myself before the meeting even happened. That wasn't welcomed at all. Village staff also tried to initiate a conversation between the two of us. That was shut down as well. So we have reached out. I also did put my card out there. My card has my email, my cell phone number. Obviously, you can find me on Facebook. So there was no contact made. I don't want to push that, as I feel like it will be more harmful than good.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Let me just add one more thing to consider. I was actually out there twice today. I was out there at noon, and then I met Roberta and Angela out there later in the afternoon, and we talked about different things and concepts that were happening, that are occurring. And we looked at the location on the south side that had been a recommendation by the Plan Commission, and that's definitely a safety hazard. You know, dumpster just can't go there. But my first visit out there at noon, what I was really amazed at was standing at the site, the odors that we could smell from the other restaurants farther north. And it just had to be the wind was blowing, but you can literally smell the cooking there, the vents. And there's been a lot of talk about the odors with the restaurant, you know, with food spoils and whatnot. So one thing that I've seen in other communities is that they've actually enclosed the dumpsters. They've, you know, like put them like in a shed, you know, but they've left the front part open, or it's been able to be open, because Groot has to wheel those down into the parking area and then have those hauled away. So the concept as far as waste removal would remain the same. However, the only thing that we're doing here is confining any odors that may be escaping, you know, from off-site and impacting the adjoining neighbor. I don't know if that's something that, you know, you can coordinate with them or not, or with staff, but it was just a concept that we kind of kicked around out there. And
We had previously mentioned that would be an alternative option to moving the dumpster. There was nothing, any feedback that we heard back from that, but we did suggest that originally, as in closing that completely. We would pay for it and take that on ourselves.
yeah, be pretty simple to do. You'd have to build up the walls and cut some of the limbs down on the tree. We looked at all that, so, but that's all
I think a lot of the supporters' arguments that will change happens, and I think Michelle brought that up. 100% agree. I'm not opposed to the change, but it's making that change work with the adjacent property uses. That's one of the LaSalle factors. Council, you know them very well. LaSalle and Sinclair, you know them very well. Is just to harmonize that with adjacent. So I guess I would encourage the neighbors and you to once again try to get together and talk and see if you can talk about the ghosts. I think that was a great point. And maybe you can do something with the garbage and make that fit better for you.
That's one of my sticking points, is the trash.
Yeah.
Your concept is wonderful. You know, I'm excited for you guys, but the trash is a huge sticking point.
It is a challenge with the location, but as we've conveyed to the board now and to staff before, we're willing to do whatever we can to address it. And if that's an enclosure, we're all part of it. We're not against it. it's a challenge, and it's something we can't change with this particular site, other than some sort of containment, and we're not against it. So, and we've conveyed that.
Just to echo what everyone's been mentioning as far as the notes that I took from those for and those against, two resounding issues, smell and traffic. Frankly, I think the traffic is a complete red herring when you're close to 59. We want a lot of traffic on 59. That's the economic engine that we're pushing is 59 traffic. You wouldn't establish a business unless there was traffic there. So I think the factor that we have is the smell, obviously, or what could be rotting in a dumpster, and I totally understand the concern there. And I believe we would need to have some kind of a solution to that, because it's absolutely not going to get moved.
I have to think that Groot has answers to that problem, frankly, in some way, whether it's a containment unit for food waste or something along those lines. I used to work for Crown and Groot, and I know they have a lot of solutions for recycling. It just seems natural that they would have one for smelly food waste. So that's something we can look into for sure.
Will you also be keeping the used oil outside? Correct. In the enclosure?
It's its own separate unit, but in the same enclosure, yes, sir.
And there was a reference to the Ashton Gardens development, which I think is actually kind of in your neighborhood, or was in your neighborhood on that side of town. And one of the things that we had said to the petitioner was, well, look, you've got to make peace with your neighbors. If your neighbors are opposed, they're not going to go away, right? So you're going to continue to have issues. So if we do have a problem today for the garbage, that problem has to be durable. It has to last. Or when somebody's out front smoking or out back smoking, or they slam that lid at 2 in the morning, the neighbors are going to call the police, and you won't know peace. So they won't know peace, you won't know peace, and who loses? The community. And I think that's where a lot of us are coming from too, is we've got to make sure that the parties can work together and live together.
We agree.
Yeah,
We agree.
absolutely, absolutely. We understand all of the concerns that have been brought up. We're not arguing any of them. They are very valid concerns. I've mentioned I live across from one of the oldest bars in Bartlett. I can understand your concerns. I also know I am going to be there 24/7 as much as I possibly can. I'm not a fan of cigarettes. I don't like cigarette butts. There's no one having any access to the outside or the side of our building except for employees, which will not be smoking anywhere near our building. The 15 feet rule apply. 15 feet, now you're in the parking lot. I don't think anyone's going to be smoking inside the middle of the parking lot. I understand, and we've tried our best to address them all. If you guys have recommendations for any other ways, I'm just afraid that if we agree to, come to some conclusion as far as the dumpster, we're willing to do whatever that takes. But we also have to have neighbors doing that as well. It can't just be one-sided that we're addressing all of these concerns and we're willing to do all of this if we're not even being heard, I feel like.
I think staff can meet with the petitioner and go over a few of your recommendations, and let's see what we can work out.
That's a good idea, Roberta.
I would like to say, even though I appreciate Trustee DEYNE's comment about enclosing the dumpster, if that's one of the things we're looking at, I'd have to be pretty much assured that, just putting something inside of a building where it's going to heat up and potentially cook faster wouldn't cause more odor in and of itself. So.
And I think that comes back to, how many times is the garbage being picked up? I think that's something that we also have to talk about with them. So there's a couple issues here. I agree.
Right now, so the board knows, the contract with the waste hauler is 3 pickups a week. And I believe that's after the weekend business, and then it's the Friday and one in between, so.
Is that more than any other restaurant would usually?
At our location now, currently it's only picked up once a week.
Okay.
So we would change, at least for our unit, because we have a separate dumpster that with a lock and a key, that would be picked up Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every week, including with the oil compartment that's there as well. So all together.
Which is more than average for even a larger restaurant than we have.
All right.
Mr. President, I think, in my opinion, based on all of these, I would like to forward this to the board for a vote next meeting.
And I'm sure staff's going to be working with the petitioner as well. Again, for those in the audience and those, the petitioner, we really appreciate it. We know that there's some controversy on both sides of this. This board is well aware of that. We do understand that. It is the job of the board to make these decisions and try to come to amicable solutions. So if we can get some additional information, which this was really informational to this evening, we'll hopefully get it to a vote at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of your time and attention. I know a lot of you guys were responding to emails. Trustee Hopkins, it was about 10:30, I think. So I just want to say thank you for all your time. I know that you guys aren't put in an easy situation between residents, and you guys are trying to find the best solution for everyone. So I just wanted to take the time to say I greatly appreciate it. All of your attention that you've put into this for us, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. President, that is the final item on the Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Chairman GABRENYA. We will move back up to the top.
Top, okay.
We're not going to go backwards. Right. We'll move back up to the top for Building and Zoning Committee Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. There's 3 items on our agenda. The first one looks pretty straightforward. It's the Jain Society annexation. The petitioner is requesting to annex 1 acre site adjacent to their existing property directly to the south. Upon annexation, the subject's property will be zoned to ER1, a state residence zoning district. The property is located on the south side of Route 59. No improvements will be made to this property at this time. Therefore, no annexation agreement or public hearing is required. So we are going to review this request and hopefully send it to the board for a final vote if there's no objections from the committee. Does anyone have anything to say? No. Let's forward this to the board for a final vote at the next meeting. The next item on our agenda is the Express Car Wash. The petitioner is requesting a site plan review and a special use permit for a car wash proposed to be located at 1255 West Lake Street, located along the south side of Lake Street, 800 feet east of Naperville Road. We're going to review the petitioner's request and maybe send it to the Plan Commission and have a public hearing. With that, Roberta, can you give us a rundown?
Sure, thank you. As stated, the petitioner is requesting a site plan review and a special use for a car wash on a site that's 2.88 acres in size on the south side of Lake Street, east of Naperville Road. It would be a tunnel wash with accompanying car vacuums, and the proposed building would be about 5,500 square feet with brick and stone veneer. It would include metal canopies. The tallest portion of the building would be approximately 33 feet 5 inches, and however, the average height of the car wash would be 19 feet 6 inches, which does meet our zoning ordinance requirement of 25 feet. Windows would be incorporated along both the east and west elevations. Here's some elevations for you, which would provide a clear view through the building while vehicles are accessing the tunnel wash. They are requesting 1 curb cut access onto Lake Street. Again, Lake Street's under the jurisdiction of IDOT, so they would have to approve their curb cut. Internal circulation on the site. Let me go back to the site plan.
Here we go.
Would primarily consist of a one-way traffic pattern clockwise with vehicles queuing at the pay stations at the south end and then entering the building along the south side. Vehicles would travel through the tunnel wash and then exit the building on the north end. A total of 25 stacking spaces is required per the zoning ordinance, and this plan shows actually 57 stacking spaces. 31 vacuum parking stalls are shown, and including 2 handicap accessible parking stalls, and they have provided 5 parking stalls for the employees. Petitioners designed the car wash to keep the drier portion of the tunnel wash furthest away from the residential uses to the south. And in addition, the central vacuum mechanical unit would be located adjacent to the trash enclosure and would be screened on all 4 sides. And have a metal roof matching the building and the vacuum canopies and architecturally matching both the vacuums and the building. A 6-foot-high wood fence would be installed along the south property line along with landscaping. And the hours of the car wash are proposing 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday. Staff recommends forwarding the petitioner's request to the Plan Commission for further review and their public hearing.
Thank you, Roberta. Is there any questions from the committee?
Yeah. Roberta, when we opened up the car wash on 59, I know that we had some issues with decibels and calming that down because part of it was going towards the residents. Is there enough detention area there with that pond to muffle or stop that, or is there going to need to be some sort of decibel lowering closure?
We had the petitioner investigate that for us. I believe they can provide you with an answer, but the house to the south, the closest house to the south is actually 227 feet away. So yes, to your question is there's quite a bit of distance.
From the actual structure, right?
Yes.
The head house hasn't been built yet, right?
No, there is a house down there.
Is there?
Two of them?
Yes. Yes.
2 of them down there now?
That's what Brian's saying too, right, Brian?
Yes, that's correct. So, and I believe at 100 feet, the decibel level would be 0, but I believe you can
address
attest to
that.
that.
Good evening to the committee. My name is Alan Jacob. I'm the attorney for the petitioners Dan and Sean Andre. My business address is 950 North Milwaukee, Suite 329, Glenview, Illinois. To address the decibel issue, there are 2 noisemakers on this proposed car wash. One is an interior vacuum, and it's been tested to exhibit 0 decibels to the outside. The other one is the exterior vacuum. An exterior vacuum without any borders around it would produce 54 decibels at 30 feet. However, the design of this car wash has a enclosure for the vacuum, and the enclosure isn't just borders, it's actually masonry with a metal roof on top of it, so it reduces the decibels to 0 outside that enclosure. And the other issue that I wanted to also address, if there is a question from the committee, is lighting. The lighting in the parking lot, according to tests done from the proposal, produces 0-foot candles beyond the lot line. So it wouldn't cascade outside the perimeter of the property.
Pretty clear.
Where is actually the vacuums located on this site plan? The vacuums?
Hi, Board. Nick Spallone with Car Wash Pro Designers. I live in Hinsdale, Illinois. So if you look at, we have that little red light. Yep. If you look at the building itself, to the south of the building, you'll see 2 rows. Both rows carry the actual vacuum stalls, and they are canopied stalls. So all of the mechanics are built inside. Nothing shows from the outside. I have a very clear rendering of the facility. Designed it to kind of look like a bank. I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, it's in our packet.
So do you have separate vacuum motors at each location, or do you have one central vac?
On the building side, there's a central vacuum system that's located within the building in an equipment room. And then there's a central vacuum system on the side, the vacuum side that's away from the building in a closed carousel refuge area. There was a recommendation from the development committee in the beginning of maybe putting that that enclosure closer to lake. We decided to put it closer to the back, so that way any noise that may have been from people opening up car doors or leaving the radios on, that would act as kind of a deflector of noise between us and the residents in the back.
That was an excellent recommendation from staff.
One of I'm sorry, it's getting a little late. One of my concerns is notice. So I know we're going to mail notice to the owners of the property on Sierra Court. But I'm concerned, what if that property is under contract, so the people who bought those lots aren't getting notice? You see where I'm going with this? I think it's a perfectly reasonable development, and I'd hate to see our new residents on Sierra feel like they were ambushed. So what are your thoughts on that? We put a sign facing in that direction, what do you do?
Well, they're required to put a sign on their property, but
Right.
it will be on Lake Street.
Correct, so, yeah, I think
And-
maybe that would be a reasonable way to afford notice to,
If they're within the 250 feet area, because from the staff report, there were only 6 pins within 250 feet of the lot line, and those were sent. But I don't know if Sierra is within that 250 feet zone.
yeah.
If it is,
It's the residential subdivision just to the south of the subject property.
so absolutely, if notice needs to be sent to them, we can certainly send certified notice to them as well, as long as we can identify who the owners are, their PIN numbers, and the pertinent information to send them
We're
out.
talking about people under contract on new construction contracts, right?
Right, and I'm just encouraging that if we can figure out a way to take one step further, I think we should do that, just to avoid.
Another sign facing that way wouldn't be a
I
big.
think that's reasonable. I don't think you're gonna get any.
Put a sign in the sale trailer. They're gonna need to get notice somehow.
Yeah, that would be a little complicated, because if they're under contract, we could notify the actual owner who's
Right.
trying to sell it.
I
But then do
understand.
they have to disclose it to the
That's our point.
buyer?
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
We don't,
we don't wanna get into
the
a
owner
situation
may
where we
not tell the prospective.
They may not. They
contract
may not
parties.
have to disclose it.
That's why we want a separate sign facing that way.
Because we've had issues out on the west side of town, yeah, so whatever we can do to spread the word, I think that'd be a good thing.
We will try to spread the word.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments?
Point. Nope.
And we will forward this on to the Plan Commission for further review and to conduct the most important public hearing.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
The next thing on our agenda is the Moretti's Wine Club. The petitioner is requesting a special use permit to sell packaged liquor, wine, and start a wine club for their guests. Moretti's is located at 1175 West Lake Street, located along the south side of Lake Street, 1,500 feet east of Naperville Road. And with that, does staff have anything to add to this, or is it pretty straightforward?
It's pretty straightforward. It's a membership, wine membership.
Okay.
First of all, we have to apologize to Jim for making him come on a Cubs night.
Oh, no. This is my idea. I'm jacked up over this wine club.
I know, I can tell.
From everybody.
Don't you wish I didn't text you to come?
No, yeah, you did get me going there.
As a petitioner, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd like to, number one, say hi, trustees, and I'm proud to be here representing Moretti's with, I think, the greatest thing since half-price pizza on Tuesday. The wine club's getting an unbelievable response. This is my 5th village, 4 passed already, and 2 we already had the licensing for, and got 3 villages to go, and rumor has it that everybody's excited about it. It's going to be just like Cooper's Hawk, only they use house wine. We, with the support of Southern Wine and Spirits, the biggest wine distributor in the world, it's kind of upset that Cooper's Hawk has taken business away from them, is willing to support us with wines that are rated from 80 to 100. So we'll actually have wines that you can go to Binny's and look at, and it'll be $22 at Binny's, but it'll be $15 if you belong to Moretti's Wine Club. And you'll be able to come in, and we'll cork it at the table. You can have it at the table with your friends. It's exactly like Cooper's Hawk does it, and they're just rocking it all, worldwide. They're opening in Dubai. Jeez. And he started out in Chicago. He worked at Linford Winery in Roselle for 2 years to develop his concept. Well, I commend him. I met him once. I got to network with him. He didn't know why I was networking with him, but we're using software out of Napa Valley, professional wine club software. And just excited about it.
So we can get on the $25 membership tonight? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
I could absolutely take memberships tonight.
All right.
No,
bottles of
I
wine?
really am. I'm excited. And the quality of the wine, Linfred's a house wine. Cooper's Uncle's a house wine. We're going to have rated wines.
That's fantastic.
And the mayor was just
Wine enthusiast, 90.
We love it.
We'll forward this on to the Plan Commission.
I think it goes to a
No
board for a
question,
vote, doesn't
Trustee
it?
Ranky?
No, not at all.
We'll forward this on to the Plan Commission to, for further review and to conduct a public hearing. Is this something that anyone would object to instead of coming back to committee?
Let's just go right to board.
We'll send it right to board.
Better idea.
Yeah.
I've already
for being here
drafted
tonight.
the new wine classification for this, so.
You can bring them up if you have something to pass out. That's okay. We'll share.
Thank you.
Give it to her. She's a wine drinker.
Scott, what's the score?
Thank you, Jim.
Still 1-0?
1-0 in the bottom of the sixth.
Fifth?
Bottom of the sixth.
Sixth? Yeah, thanks.
This is going to be really neat. Thanks for being here, Jim.
That's all we have under building and zoning.
You'll catch the end of the game, too, and we won't.
Okay. Am I done?
You're done.
Okay, thank you so much.
We're going to push it through to the board as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
That's all we have under building and zoning.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Next item we have this evening under Finance and Golf Committee, Chairman DEYNE.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only item we have this evening is health insurance, and the village board, we requested additional time and give them an opportunity to discuss the employee group health insurance plans and costs. And Janelle, are you prepared to move forward with this?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be so kind to proceed.
Absolutely. At the last board meeting, we brought to you what we feel is an effective plan for a substantial reduction in the cost to the group health insurance. $319,860 for equivalent to 9% is a significant change that we believe adds value to the plans that the board would like to see moving forward. Considering these changes are granular, and we will continue to be moving forward in the next 3 to 5 years with more changes to come. We do believe that one of the major components of this plan moving forward is an educational component, and our broker and village staff are committed to educating our employees on making what we believe are responsible choices for not only themselves and their families, but also for the village moving forward. In the memo and the documents that I provided to you, I provided some more information regarding some rates. And I just wanted to point out one thing. If you look at the rates for the PPO plan options, the rates that I provided are the ones that were quoted to us by the broker. And if we do decide to go with a combination of a large PPO network and the hybrid option, we would require that the employees would buy up to stay in that large network PPO option. And so, therefore, the costs to the village would actually be the same for those networks, and then the difference would be paid for by the employees. So if you have questions regarding the particular amounts, I can provide that for you, but I just wanted to point that out to you. I didn't want to put the actual costs because I want to, we're talking about recommendations and for your consideration, so I just wanted to point that out to you. So, so I'm open to any questions, concerns, comments that you may have. Again, I feel that this is a start in the right direction. I believe that 9% is significant in reducing those costs, and like I said, we're committed to doing what the board had asked us to do. So we feel this is a step in the right direction.
Janelle, I concur. I think that this is a step in the right direction, and a 9% reduction is it's significant. It really is for 1 year, considering we're looking at an increase before. Now we have a reduction of 9%. And as you stated, and I concur with that also, is that this is just the beginning. If we continue working with the agent there'll be other opportunities for us to even offer, have a reduction in savings, additional reduction in savings. So I want to thank you guys for all the effort that you put forth in this. And I really don't have any more comments on this.
I think it was 3 months ago we started this, 2 months ago we started this conversation in health insurance. And I believe Madam Administrator had mentioned we were going to, your initial report was an increase of, trying my memory here, 13%?
Yeah, it was something like that.
It was 3.04% for...
That was going to be the increase?
Correct.
Okay, 3.0 increase to a 9% decrease in total cost. So I think that's a good start.
That's an excellent start.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, anyone? Mr. President, that's all we had on our agenda this evening.
I think they probably need some direction on this. Does anyone have any additional things that they would like to have staff dig into for additional savings? Let's all not get rah-rah about 9% when it could be 12.
Thank you, Todd. You're right. You know, in a nutshell, this plan makes a real significant structural changes in that we're moving from the grandfathered plans into the standard plans. It's a big deal. But of course, you know that there are many, many moving parts within those plans. And some of those we're seeing changes, and then we have a list of other things that we're working with the broker to look on in the future. This is going to be a big educational push, and our broker and our staff, we're committed to working with our employees and our retirees so that they can make this change and move along with us. I really feel that our staff understands the goals expressed by the board, and that your commitment is to work with us as we move through this process, caring that our employees are looked after, and that your responsibilities to the community as a whole are also looked after. And it's a real partnership as we go forward, and we will continue to do that.
Fantastic. Just a question that I have in regards to the old plan. Would we have been forced to change that no matter what because of the Cadillac type significance? I'm assuming that we would have. How much, do you know how much of a difference this is from what we had to change anyway?
You know, gosh, we'd have to go back and look at that because, you know, the Cadillac analysis has been a while ago. And, you know, it's been so much really on the ropes that nobody really talks about it anymore as being a specter of something hanging out there for you. So we can go back and take a look at that, but it wasn't really a big consideration in this.
But I think it's important for especially staff, all staff, to know that there had to be some changes.
Oh, that's a...
Not only from our perspective, but actually by law.
I think everybody gets that.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm assuming that if some of these changes aren't working well for us, you're going to report back and we can adjust.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think what this will allow us to do is evaluate again the costs. If we move forward with the plan that we recommended, employees are going to make some choices, and it will, you know, fluctuate the enrollments in various plans. Some people that are already in the PPO plan may make that change to the HMO plan, and we're going to educate them. I think a huge misconception about an HMO plan is that you don't get the same care that you do in a PPO plan, and so we will educate our employees on
I can educate them. I've had an HMO forever.
And, you know, and again, it's a personal choice. Some people feel very strongly against HMO because they had an issue in the past. But I think HMOs have certainly come a long way and advanced in care. So, you know, we will do that education proponent.
And I think what we heard when we had the analysis with the other brokers coming in and presenting was that consumer education is key, and moving people toward being better consumers and better advocates for their own unique medical needs are really key to where the success is. And we've made a big, big step toward that, and I think we're going to reap the benefits of it.
So there's always, always, always in these major decisions as the leadership group that there's things on the fence. There's still this extra thing right here we could move. What are those?
Well, they're the last paragraph of your memo. They include further plan design changes in that those are the different out-of-pocket expenses that we've tweaked in the past. Looking at spousal exclusion if they have coverage through their own employer, and also evaluating the retiree carve-out. And there was another idea that came up that I think we saw just looking at what other communities are doing. Some communities require new employees, you're just enrolled in the HMO plan for the first year. It's a default enrollment. And so we're looking at how that fits into what we have here and if that's an option for the future. So those are some of the things that we're looking at moving forward.
All right.
If I can just say one more thing, I want to recognize Tracy Grice. She's our benefits coordinator, and without her help in this process, we would not have opened our eyes to some of the issues that she deals on a very personal level with a lot of our employees, with claims that they're not getting paid, or helping them figure out their explanation of benefits and things like that. And I just want to recognize that she played a huge role in this process. She knows our employees very well and how these changes will affect them, and she's very committed, as we all are, to educating our staff. And so she's really brought to light some of the things that we need to do moving forward. And so I just want to make sure that she's recognized that she played a big role in this process as well.
Thank you, Tracy. Stand and bow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I'll let you end your committee if you want to, Ray.
Yes, we're all set then.
All right.
I was just.
Thank you, Chairman DEYNE.
Second.
We are going to be adjourning to, proceeding to executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act, and also to discuss sale or lease of real estate pursuant to Section 2C6 of the Open Meetings Act. So we'll be adjourning to executive session.
With a 5-minute break.
With a 5-minute break.
We need a motion.